So you want to go sailing. You've watched all the sailing channels and it looks lovely. You want to do this. Honey, we can do this. We can go sailing. It's going to be lovely. Fantastic. But what a lot of the sailing channels, ourselves included, don't show you is the other side of boat life. It's not easy. There are times that are tough, there are times that are challenging. And you need to acquire some new skill sets you never thought about before. And that's the other side. So, you know, in the interest of responsible, let's call it responsible journalism, I'm putting together this video of some of the other things, the other side of sailing, okay, which you're going to need to deal with. So I've made a list of 7 items, and we'll work through that list. The first one is plumbing. When you live aboard a boat, now hang on, I must just stop there and go back a bit. A lot of these things can be dealt with by throwing money at the problem. In a lot of cases you can do that. Not in all cases. Sometimes you might be in a remote area, you might be in the middle of the ocean and there's no one to throw the money at. The other consideration is that if you keep throwing money at the problem, your sailing kitty is going to dry up very quickly. So I just want to say that up front, a lot of problems can be solved with money, but not always. Okay, so number 1, plumbing. You're going to become a plumber. You need to know the plumbing system in your boat, and when there's a problem, you need to be able to fix it. And that includes fixing the toilets. Okay, you're going to have to get in there, get your hands dirty and get it fixed, because there's going to be no one else to do it, in most cases. And you'll learn very quickly to train your crew and to train anybody who comes onto your boat not to put toilet paper down the head. Okay, that will block their head and you'll be up to your elbows in sugar honey iced tea unblocking the toilet. Not nice. Okay, so number 1, you're a plumber. Number 2, you're an electrician. Okay, your boat in most cases will be a 12-volt electrical system, and if you know very little about electronics, you're going to have to get up to speed quite quickly. You're going to need to know about volts, amps, watts, and the relationship between the 3 of them. You're going to need to know how your system works, from solar panels to alternator, charging your battery system, that power flowing through to your control panel, and all the devices that run off your electrical system. And you kind of want to get to a point where if there's a problem, you can make a plan, even albeit a makeshift plan, to get you to where you need to get to, where you can get it fixed. So you need to understand the system. 3, you need to be a diesel mechanic. You know, the days of calling the electrical guy or the cable guy or the plumber guy, those days are over. You are the plumber guy. You are the mechanic guy. If you, like me, you didn't have an intimate knowledge of diesel engines before sailing, again, you need to get up to speed. There's several ways you can do that. One is, I think you need to understand the basic components of your engine and how it works. That's a starting point. Then the next step is you need to at least be able to service your motor anywhere in the world. And there's several ways you can do that. One is, what I did is I paid for a mechanic to come on board and do a service, and I worked with him. I photographed the process, I made notes, and I actually put together a document which I've PDF'd showing me exactly how to service my motor from A to Z. And now I can service my motor anywhere in the world. I carry 2 sets of spares and parts, engine oil, transmission oil, so that anywhere in the middle of the ocean I can do a full service on Seascape. You need to get to that point. Another good idea is to get some good reading material. There's a book, Marine Diesel Basics by Denison Berwick, which is really almost a non-negotiable. You should get the book. And what Denison does in his book is he covers all the components of the diesel engine, and he focuses mainly on maintenance. In other words, preventative stuff. All right. If you look after your diesel engine, treat it well, do regular checks on it, service it regularly, it will look after you. Number 4 on the list, doctor. You're now the doctor on board, and you need to take care of yourself and your crew. Okay, the starting point of this is you need to have a comprehensive medical kit. Okay, I'm not going to go into detail on what should be in the medical kit because that's a video all on its own. But it needs to include largely the basics plus a bit more. So you need to have painkillers, paracetamol, basic painkillers, up to more stronger painkillers. We use a Panama suppository. You need to have anti-inflammatories. You need to have antihistamines. You need to be able to deal with lacerations. So you need plasters, dressings. You need to have bomb bandages. You need antiseptic washes, and you need antiseptic ointments. Those are like the basics. Oh yeah, okay. And then you're also going to be needing antibiotics. So basically, for me, the antibiotics are divided into two areas. One is for infections. So you got some kind of flesh or skin infection. You need a broad spectrum antibiotic for that. We use doxycycline, works very well. And then you need a respiratory anti-inflammatory, antibiotic. And with the antibiotics, it carry at least 2 courses of each. Okay, and important, as you all know, you need to finish the course. You don't want those bugs developing immunity to those drugs. And at this point, I just also want to mention that your medical kit is primarily to look after yourself and your crew, but it's not only for yourself and your crew. You may come upon a village where a villager is ill or been damaged or hurt. You may come across another cruiser that's ill, and if you have a comprehensive medical kit well stocked, you're able to actually assist them. So not only for yourself and your crew. Suggestion there is go see your GP, explain to him what you're going to be doing, and sit with your GP, which is what I did, and we came up with a comprehensive list of things that we need, and I stocked my medical kit that way. I was very fortunate that my GP actually wrote me a script for local anesthetic, and he gave me hypodermic needles with local anesthetic and suture material. And I actually had the fortune or misfortune of actually using it. You know, when we were in Malta, we were up a little bay right out of town, nowhere near a doctor or a hospital, and we hadn't even checked into the country yet. We'd been there for 2 weeks, and I sliced my toe open. Getting to a doctor or hospital wasn't really an option, and I chose to stitch my toe up myself. So as you can see here, it was a lot of fun. It's not as difficult as it looks. As you inject, squirt the local anesthetic, and it actually anesthetizes as you go. So you anesthetize the head of the needle as you go. So it's not as difficult and as painful as it looks. But the point is, I had the material, I had the local anesthetic, and I was able to stitch my foot, which solved a big problem. A good thing about a comprehensive medical kit is that it gives you a sense of, I won't say confidence, but of self-sufficiency, you know, and it just kind of takes a lot of stress away, because you know if A, B, C, or D happens, you actually have what it is that you need to deal with it, and that does take some of the stress out of sailing. So very important. Okay, so you're a plumber, electrician, a mechanic, and a doctor. Didn't know what to say. You didn't know you're going to be all these things. Okay, number 5 on the list. You need to be physically fit. I'm not suggesting that you have to run 10Ks in 50 minutes or you need to be a triathlete, but you need to be reasonably physically fit. Living on a boat is a physical exercise in itself. You know, it's moving around the boat when you're sailing, even when you're on anchor, the boat's rocking, you're climbing up and down stairs, you're climbing around shrouds. You know, my back lazarette, I've got to lower myself into the back lazarette and I've got to pull myself up to get out. It's physical. Living on a boat is physical. Okay, but there's other things that need to be done as well. So, number 1, collecting water. All right, so you might be lucky enough to have a water maker on board, in which case this isn't a major problem, except sometimes you're anchored in dirty water and you don't want to use your water maker because it's going to clog up your filters and your membrane. And in order to try and extend the life of your membrane, you're going to collect water. And in some cases, you might have a breakage in your water maker, and so you're back to collecting water. So collecting water, jerry cans, sometimes you've got to walk long distances, you've got to fill up your jerry cans. That's 20-25 kilos of water. You've got 2 cans in your hand, it's 50 kilos. And you're hauling it back to the boat, to the tender, hauling it back up to the boat. filling up the water tanks, and this has got to be done fairly regularly. Okay, it's physical. It gets tiring. So, collecting water. Number 2, cleaning the bottom. It is very important to keep the bottom of your boat clean. Okay, even with anti-foul, growth fouls up there, grows on there quite quickly, and it slows your boat down considerably. Growth on your bottom will take a knot off your speed in no time. You know, if you're sailing downwind in 25 knots of wind, it's probably not that big a deal if your bottom's clean or not clean. But if you're sailing to windward, you want a clean bottom, you can point a lot better. And if you're sailing in light winds, a clean bottom is very important. A clean bottom can make the difference. That one knot I spoke about can make the difference between motoring and sailing. So you could have a trip where you end up motoring for 2 days and sailing for 1 day. With a clean bottom, you end up sailing for the whole 3 days, and it makes a huge difference to the life of your motor. It makes a huge difference to fuel costs. And if you're like me, I'm just happier when I'm sailing. Clean bottom. You need to keep your bottom of your boat clean, and that's a physical exercise. Right? It's tiring. Right? The only good thing about it is when you finished it, the ice cold beer is waiting for you, and it's never tasted so good. Alrighty, and then I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other examples, but what happens is things will break on your boat, right? And as a result of those breakages, you have to compensate in some way, and quite often that's in a physical way. So when we were sailing up the bottom end of Tanzania, our windlass packed up, right? And at that time we were sailing from one island to the next island to the next island, and we were anchoring overnight, leaving in the morning, sailing during the day, anchoring overnight. So there was a lot of anchor hoisting and weighing, or dropping and weighing, and this had to be done manually. So I physically had to pull up the anchor myself. Fortunately the winds were light, so it wasn't too challenging in terms of having to pull in a strong wind and current and stuff. The conditions were quite benign, but it's physical and it's got to be done. So that's just an example of what can happen. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other examples. Okay, number 6, bad weather sailing. Now, with the weather forecasting services these days and how accurate they are, you can avoid sailing in bad weather 90% of the time. If you're doing an ocean crossing, in most instances it's in the trade winds, not all, but in most instances it's in the trade winds. Very manageable sailing, you just got to watch out for squalls. But there comes a time when you get hit by bad weather. It's unforecasted, it might be a squall, it's a bad squall. We've had it several times where we've been hit by bad weather, and you have to deal with that. Right? The biggest problem with bad weather, in my opinion, the biggest single problem is having too much sail up. Right? If you reduce sail, reef early, reef deeply, in most instances you'll be fine. Put the motor on if you need to, but it's not the gin and tonic sailing that you're seeing in the movie channels. This gets hectic. We don't have much footage of bad weather sailing because when we're in bad weather, it's all hands on deck, and we're focusing on getting our ship through that. We're not focusing on filming. So that's something you need to understand, and you need to know it is going to happen, and you need to prepare for it. When I say prepare, both the boat prepared and mentally prepared and physically prepared. The upside to bad weather, experiencing bad weather, is when you come out the other end, you feel better about yourself, you feel more confident, you have more confidence in your boat, and basically the bar just raises. And I think that's all part of developing as a sailor. So bad weather sailing is part of the program. You are going to experience it, you do need to deal with it, and probably sooner the better. Last but not least, anchoring in a gale. anchoring in a gale in itself is not a big deal, provided you've got a whole ocean behind you, because if your anchor drags or parts or something goes wrong, you're going to drift out to sea. It's when you're anchoring in a gale and you have a lee shore. You either have reef behind you, you have a rocky shoreline, or shallow sandbanks. And trust me, 9 times out of 10, when you're anchoring in a gale, you are going to have something behind you. And quite often these gales come at midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. They don't wait for the middle of the day, quite often. The wind was really howling, 33 knots, gusting up to 40 knots. It's something you're going to need to, it's something you are going to experience, it's something you need to get used to, and you need to get your head around it. My advice to anyone is do not skimp on your ground tackle. The 2 most important things on your boat are a well looked after and well functioning and very reliable diesel engine. And number 2 is a great anchor that you can trust explicitly. Those are the 2 most important things on your boat. Not sails, not Victron electronic systems, not water makers. Those are all auxiliary, nice to have things. A reliable engine and a reliable anchor ground tackle system. The 2 most important things in your boat. Don't forget it. So I'm going to say it right up front. My recommendation, buy yourself a Rockner anchor. Okay, this is not a paid promotion, right? Just through my experience, get a Rockner. Get one that is 2 notches above the spec for your boat. When we got into Seascape, she had a 16 kg Delta anchor. I'm not knocking the anchor was great. We sat out some blows in the Mediterranean, we sat out some blows in the Canary Islands, and she performed very well. But it came fitted with a 16 kg Delta anchor. I upgraded that to a Rockner anchor. I checked at that time, we were registered with the Cook Islands, and I checked their specification for a boat of this size and nature. They said we should have a 20 kg anchor. I went for a 25 kg Rockner anchor. I have 60 meters of 10mm galvanized chain. Don't have rode, which has got rope and chain included in it. Go 100% chain, no less than 60 meters. That ground tackle has served me, served us, served the boat, served my family very well. I have kissed that anchor more than once when hoisting it. So, you get caught in a gale, if you've got the right tackle, ground tackle, you set your anchor, set it well, right, and you sit the blowout. Like I said, they don't often come during the day, in the middle of the night. Right? You don't sleep that night. You sit. I don't use an anchor alarm. I haven't found one that works for me. I sit with Navionics. I open a track on Navionics, and I sit with Navionics open in front of me, and I watch that track with one eye, and that tells me exactly if we're dragging or not dragging. Dragging anchor on a lee shore is frightening. It's terrifying. So you sit out your gale, and again, if you've got the right tackle, you come out the other end feeling better prepared, feeling more confident in your abilities, and feeling confident in your anchor and your ground tackle, and you will give it a hug and a kiss. So I hope this has helped. Gives you a more balanced view on the sailing life. This is what it's about. You know, it's the good and the bad. It's like life in general. You've got to take the good with the bad, right? And don't think, oh, I'm going to leave my working life, there's going to be no stress and it's going to be fantastic. There's always stress in your life. Financial stress, sailing stress, weather stress, engine stress, there's always stress. You only trade one stress for another stress. Hopefully your overall stress levels come down a little bit, but don't think it's a stress-free life. It's not. So, I hope you've learned a little bit from our discussion. In my experience, living aboard and cruising for the last 4 years. This is what we've been through. And yeah, I think it kind of balances it out. There are those beautiful and fantastic days which make it all worthwhile. But if you're prepared and you can deal with it, you can deal with the downside, and yeah, and enjoy your sailing experience, you know, and enjoy what it's all about, and create those fantastic memories, which is why I did this in the first place.